1, 1, 2. Check me out right here, yo. Need to turn the track up a little bit for me. All up in my ears. The mic is loud, but the music ain't loud. Yeah. Yeah. Now the mic is low now. Turn the mic up a little bit. My shit's all the way up. Yeah.
So I'm starting on my Kali Linux. I'm going to start my Microsoft as well. And while that's booting up, okay. So Windows is booting up. Not important right now because I have my Kali Linux up. So if for those that aren't familiar with FatRat, let's it's called the FatRat. Okay, not the singer. So you can get it at this GitHub repository. And you can see this is where we're going to get it from. But it's just a different tool in your tool belt to actually use. Because one of the things that we want to make sure that when you are looking at your career in cybersecurity, there are certain tools that they're expecting you to be familiar with or know. So Metasploit is one, MSF Venom, Veil Evasion. FatRat is a tool that a lot of people have started to use just to create their malware because everyone's using MSF Venom, everyone's using Metasploit or Veil. So this is just something to create your backdoors or exploitable files that the signatures may not be well known. And with anything, you still have to tweak stuff as well to make sure you get that antivirus evasion. So basically going to follow the instructions here to install it. I already have it installed, but I'm going to want to walk through with you so you can get comfortable to actually see what I'm seeing. So what I'm going to do to download anything from a GitHub site, I'm going to go to Sec, I guess that's how you pronounce it. I'm going to go to code and I'm just going to copy the link. And I could have done this within Windows as well. I mean, I'm sorry, my Kali Linux. Did not want my Windows to update, but that's fine because we're assuming that the person you're gonna compromise Windows is updating as well, or they have the latest updates. Hopefully they don't, but let's just say they do. So I'll go to my web browser, and I can do a Google search from here to actually find it. And RAT pretty much stands for Remote Access Tool, I think. So sometimes you'll see people, oh, I need to get a rat. Or I remember the movie Black Hat with the guy from Thor who's in it. They kept talking about rats and trying to get a rat. So this is basically just kind of a nomenclature to the InfoSec community. Copy. have a terminal already open. I'm going to do git clone paste to clipboard, and guess what's supposed to happen? Should have did sudo get. We're going to see what happens. Just because of how Kali Linux has changed the super user, the root user. So I'm gonna do pwd ls, and you see this is the directory of FatRat. Okay. Now, depending upon how well you like to use Linux, and on your system, definitely use a sudo git command. It should have given me an error message about permission denied. Now, depending upon how you like to use your Linux system, there's a folder called /.op. Okay, and this is for optional programs. So just to kind of give a refresher course on the file system for Linux, when I go to open this folder and I go to file system, here's all my file systems. So what I want to do is install it in this optional place for programs. So when I installed it earlier, that's actually where I installed it at. So if I go to cd op, I'm going to list, I see I have the FatRat command, the directory. So what I'm going to do now is change into the directory, and I'm using my cd command, and then also I want to list the directory structure of the FatRat so I can change into it and then type the ls command. But I can also string commands together. So now I'm going to do cd back to go back one space in the op directory. Now I'm going to go to cd, the FatRat. I'm going to do :ls. So this is going to change into the directory and then list it. So it just kind of saves me short on time. Now, when you originally install this directory, this setup is what you want to actually run. But now it has the right permissions. When you first download it, you have to change the permissions on it. So to change the permissions on it, you're going to have to do, let me do ls change mod plus x to make it executable, setup.sh. Okay. Operation not permitted because I need to do sudo. Okay. Now I'm going to pretty much do the setup again. I should get an error message. I want you to see the error message, and we're going to talk about how to troubleshoot and install the dependencies on that error message. Because always remember, you get paid for the amount of error messages you know or how to actually find and solve those. So I'm going to run the script of setup. And to run the script, since it's executable, is /. Once again, you're not root. So the cool thing about FatRat is that it'll go out and look at all the dependencies to see if it needs to install anything. Now, if you want to get familiar with this particular tool, there's definitely a lot of videos on YouTube. And then this is a pretty good tutorial from Hacking 9, the magazine, and then there's a video. And we'll start looking at using Beef and FatRat and Metasploit and a couple of combinations of things as we walk through creating our malware. So this one is basically, I'm going to do FatRat. I'm going to say FUD for fully undetectable backdoor. So there's a bunch of tutorials out here for that. And remember as well, we talked about, let's say if I want to do FatRat exploit tutorial, but I want to get the latest, I'm going to do the after 2019, right? So remember, the Google operators, or Google has after 2019. So I won't get something from, 2016 or 19, 19 or whatever. So this is going to give me everything in 2020 and after 2019. Okay. So let's check on our install. All right. So a report was created. Any issues? I'm press enter to continue. And hopefully by the time I finish this, my Windows is still updating. So if it doesn't find anything, it'll give you a remark that says finding not okay, right? So you just saw this terminal window popped up, going out, collecting different packages. And while this is doing that, I'm gonna get my power cord for my phone. I mean my computer. I'm running out of battery power. So this was something, this jar signer for Java, it found it, but initially when I did the install, it wasn't in place. So it came up with an error message. And it told me how to solve it, but that didn't work. All right, sorry about that. So while it's doing its magic, to actually fix that problem with jar signer, you're gonna have to install Java, the JDK environment, right? And then a lot of security people hate doing Java and installing it. That kind of speaks for itself. But this is the actual way to fix that signer problem. Now, the program is good enough to give you a glimpse of how to sign it to figure it out. This is basically doing apt-get, auto remove, and a bunch of other stuff that never worked. So you'll see this in the video, but this is if you get that J signer not found. Okay, so just install this and then you're good to go. Add sudo. All right, so you want to create a shortcut for FatRat in your system, so I'm just going to click yes. Installation is complete, so I can run now the tool FatRat, sudo FatRat. So one of the things I definitely want you to think about is when we see this stuff on TV, we automatically, we see some guy, he sit down, he hacks away, and he pops the box and he continues on, right? But there's a lot of understanding or a lot of trying to figure things out from a utility perspective that we need to go through to be able to just sit down at a computer, type a few commands, and pop a box, and all of a sudden, um, we we have be able to take control of that particular box. So it says press enter to continue, and also it's telling you don't use virus total to test your file. It's telling you to no distribute, hit enter. And Windows is still updating. So now you have an opportunity to create your backdoor. So there's multiple tools. So here you can create something with MS Venom, FUDWin, and FUD is fully undetectable backdoor, avoid, backdoor embedded, backdoor original APK, Instagram. And you notice the APK, so that's dealing with Android. They don't want to do that. We're going to use something called PWins because that's actually using something for PowerShell. Microsoft. So you have a bunch of stuff to actually use. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put in 6. And now it's taking me, okay, well, how do you want to create this backdoor? So I can create a batch file using PowerShell. I can use C# and PowerShell and Apache. Now we're talking about, okay, here's C plus PowerShell plus an embedded file. And it kind of gives you, okay, this is 80%. This is 97%, right? Okay, here's Metasploit, 98%. So here's one with, PowerShell, C#, batch file, all these at 100. So we want to use something that's 100%. Since we've been using batch files in the past, we're just going to use another batch file as well, just to kind of keep it consistent. Now, the interesting thing about FatRat, which is different from Metasploit, is that you see that it already has found the IP address. So we don't have to do that if config in another terminal to determine what that IP address is. So I'm going to set my IP address of 11.11.11.4. Now set my L port. I'm just going to use 666 because it's easy to remember. And then what is the name of this actual file? I'm going to call it rat 6. Okay. So now it's asking me, well, what kind of payload that you want to have in this particular file? And we're just going to use faithful old Windows interpreter reverse HTTPS. So I'm going to type 6 and enter. And now it's creating it. Now, the thing about when we're creating these files, right? It may not work. I just want to kind of show you something that you can play around with all of these, right? So I choose 1. If 1 doesn't work, then guess what? I'm going to try 2. If 2 doesn't work, I'm going to try 3. I'm going to keep going all the way down to actually see what I want. Now, we're going to get to the point where we talk about creating custom DLLs and things of that nature. But you definitely want to try it. And now my system is frozen. But what it did, it created the batch file and it put it in a specific directory. So you should see something, just for the sake of time. This was the last thing that it showed before I scrolled up. Backdoor save to, and it gives you the actual file name. And we called it what, rat2 or something, rat4. I forget what we called it, that quick, rat6. So it's going to be rat6.bat. So now I have to do just go to that particular directory and copy and paste it. I'm going to put it into my var www.html directory. And I'm doing that because I want to create a web server running on my Kali Linux that I want my Windows machine to actually go to, download the file, and then see if it actually works. Okay. Let me check my Windows, see if it. All right, that's booting up. What I'm going to do, because I know I'm going to restart my Kali. Let me check the panel for any questions. Any questions so far? Let me check the chat. Let me unmute everyone first. Okay. All right, so I want to get into that root directory just to verify that the file is actually there. So an open folder, I'm going to go to my file system. I see the root directory. It's telling me permission denied. So I want to show you something from the command line to get there. So I want to go to CD, which is now at the root of the file system. pwd, I'm at the root of the file system. I'm going to list everything. And I see this root directory. Okay. So now what I want to do is go to it. So I'm going to do cd root permission denied, sudo cd root. So I noticed I had to do sudo su change to root. All right. So I changed the super user, and you notice now how my prompt is actually different. So I'm trying to type sudo cd because basically it works with everything else in Linux. but it's not working here. So I changed to super user. Now I'm going to do cd root present working directory. I'm in there. I'm going to list it, and now I'll see my actual directory. Now, for your homework assignment, I want you to figure out, well, what's the difference between sudo, su, and why did I get that error message? And then, we'll give a prize for the person that can answer that. So I do my ls, and I noticed that it didn't finish creating that particular command, right? So now what I want to do is I'm going to leave this directory open. I'm going to basically redo it again because for some reason it did not create the actual file. So I'm going to do FatRat, sudo FatRat. So we have some people that already did the answer. So I'm going to give you another homework assignment, and we'll talk about what they wrote in the chat as well. So someone said, but the sudo, I didn't know that for the issue. So I'm gonna try that. So I'm pressing the enter, and I think I had one more enter key I should have pressed after the file was generated, but that's okay. You guys get to see it twice. It's 6. We're gonna go to option 1. My IP address is 11.11.11.4 666. We're gonna call it rat 666. Choose payload. I'm gonna do 6. You see here that all of my just passed it, but all my options were created, and this is what I forgot to do. That's why the file wasn't there. So now the actual file is created. So I'm going to go back to that directory, ls, and guess what? Still not there. All right, one more time. Oh, had an idiot moment. I didn't go inside the directory, so sorry about that. So this is the first one that I created, and this is the second one that I created, right? So make sure that you go into the actual directory, which I didn't do. Okay, so my batch file is created. Now I have two things. I can send it as a batch file to my Windows system and just click on it, see what happens, or I can test it with no distribute or anti-sign me to see if it actually works. So I'm sorry, anti-scan me. So what I'm gonna do, well, actually, let's move this file. So I'm gonna do CP. Man, just want to move it to the desktop. And then we see all the other stuff that we tested in the past. So let's go to the web browser. No distribute. Now we can do anti-scan as well. Now, when I do anti-scan, it doesn't like to do that particular batch file. It only does executables, and you saw the message, right? This guy's still scanning away. And we want to see what the results are. And it's just a simple way when you do the scan, it gives you an idea of what antivirus is there. And what I like to do is just compare what no distribute sees with also what anti-scan sees. Because we saw with one last time, one said Windows Defender couldn't find it. And the other one had like maybe 11 out of 65 or something antivirus. The other one had more. So it's just kind of interesting to see what the delta is. Now, what I could do, we've learned from a previous class, is to change this bat file to an actually executable and then send it to anti-scan. So let's do that. So ls, we're going to go to the downloads. We have this bat converter, so let's go to that directory. So now what I want to do, this is actually a Windows program. So Windows, you're not going to run executables, but we installed Wine, remember? So now we're going to run it. Okay, so I'm going to go to, let's do open a file. So here it is. Now, just like the last time, we started looking at different things in PowerShell to tweak it. You can do the exact same thing as well, right? So we can start looking at these particular arguments, and what we did last time, instead of having the initial first letter, we just start spelling things out. But we're not going to worry about it this time. undo convert. We're going to call it rat666.exe. Click save. And then now on my desktop, I have that executable. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to anti-scan-me, browse, and then scan this one. Let's see what no distribute. Oh, so I get an error. So it's good that we're running with anti-scan-me. So we'll see what it finds. Here's the results. 11 out of 26. Clean, clean. These guys will detect it. So Windows 10 Defender said clean. Now, remember last time it said clean, but it was actually found by Windows Defender. Now, on my Windows system, I just did an update. So it's kind of what they call a race condition. So how quickly are the scan engines and anti-scanning, how up to date are they versus the update that I just did with the Windows. Sorry, I wanted to read in the chat. So a couple of questions. If you accidentally place one of these on your files on a production system, are you screwed? Probably so, just because it depends, on your production system, you always want to keep that kind of pristine clean, right? So you want to kind of have your own lab environment where you kind of lab it out and play around with this, right? Now, typically in your environment at work, you should have a production and then your development or a lab environment. So in your development or testing environment, it could be actual physical machine where you're not dealing with, VirtualBox, or it could be a virtual host in VMware on the EXI host. The other ones, the recordings, yeah, I will definitely show you where the recordings are. Okay. So now I know the file says it's clean. What we're going to do, we're going to start a listener on our Kali Linux machine and start the Apache web server. Okay, so I have this executable here. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to go to file system. I'm going to go to var www.html because this is where, now let me paste because I don't have permissions. So what I'm going to do, right click, open terminal here, and I'm going to do sudo copy rat 666.executable and var www, which is the directory for Apache HTML. Okay, so now it's in there. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start the Apache web server. So it's going to be service Apache to start. Okay, so now it's starting. Already started. So now I need to create the listener. So what I want to do, start MSF console. So we get the Empire. Empire does the listener first, and you don't have to use Metasploit or the multi-handler or even a netcat listener. So I'm going to use exploit multi-handler set payload, and we use the Windows reverse HTTPS. Set localhost 11.11.11.4. Set local port. It's going to be 666. I'm going to do my show options just to make sure everything's configured correctly. All right, let me see. Yeah, so good so far. And I'm going to type exploit. So now this handler spawn up a listener on this IP address to 666 as a TCP port. Now what I'm going to do is go to my Windows system with the latest updates from Microsoft and see if this thing actually works. HTTPS. Eleven, not 11, 11, not 4. So I can get to it. So I can ping it. Let's see if I can get to. So I can't get to my Apache web server on 11.11.11.4. Oh, yeah, there we go. So the interesting thing I just noticed, I typed in HTTPS. I know my handler is listening to on HTTPS, right? But I went in my history is HTTP. So that's pretty weird. But I just downloaded the file. Click on it. Windows Protect Your PC. More info. Gonna run it anyway. And antivirus popped up. Okay. So although anti-scamming once again kind of gave us the runaround, said it was clean. No distributors bowed out on me. HTTP error, but it said it was clean. Fully updated Windows, not clean. So now, as we go down this path, we can't rely on all of our tools, and we need to get in a point where we're not just script kiddies, just using tools that we see off the trade, but also have multiple tools in our utility belt, right? So we're still going to talk about how to create this malware to infect the machine on Windows. We know our Windows is fully patched. Everything is working. Windows is doing what it's supposed to do, which is prevent stuff. Now, this is outside of using like Carbon Black or things of that nature. This is just Windows antivirus. How do I get past that? Once you get past that, then you have to figure out about all the other stuff. And we'll also walk through that as well. Okay. So the tools that we've actually, as we talk about our resume, right? We did Veil. We've done FatRat now. We've done MSF, Venom. We've done, and then Metasploit as well. All right, so each week we're adding to our tool belt. I thought we can do Empire, but we're at the top of the hour, and I don't want to prolong this any longer. So we'll wrap up today. We'll do Empire next week and PowerShell. Now, a lot of people are using Empire, and PowerShell still can be used, particularly if they're using an older version of Windows, right? Particularly Windows 7. Now with Windows 10, there's a lot of built-in PowerShell protection, but we'll go through that as well. Let me check the questions. So someone says run netstat. Yeah, you can do that as well. Yeah, for the change mod. It's a good question. Good chat. So just to kind of, so we're talking about checking permissions on file. So they're talking about a couple of commands to run. So one of the command was ls latr. Another one saying we can change mod 777 on that particular file, which is true. We did, and there's typically people like to use 755 as well. I use 777 when I'm trying to figure out the permissions and use. I said, look, anybody can use this particular file. We can also do the plus X is what I use, and maybe we'll talk about some basic Linux commands as well. Someone's talking about using a netstat command, which can be used in Linux and in Windows. So they were using netstat. One issue. So that's just the netstat command in general, right? It gives you a lot of information regarding, and you know what we're gonna do. We'll get to the syntax that they actually use, but I just kind of wanted to use the more commands so you can actually see the local IP address, the process, what it's actually talking to is something established. So that's pretty good. So netstat UNAT. You want to grep it to minus I 80. All right, so this is saying, okay, it's port 80 up and listening. It is. And we did what, 666? I don't think I turned off the handler. It's listening as well. So this is another quick way to, because we're configuring these things, but as always, the saying that Ronald Reagan created, made popular, trust and verify. I want to trust that something's running because I noticed I did HTTPS, but HTTP actually worked, but I was able to connect. So there's something in that configuration that didn't just gel the right way. UNet, this one didn't grep, but used 443. Okay, so it was listening. Use 4 and 3 established. Okay, so definitely some good feedback. So we'll take some time to go over some basic Linux stuff because we're using Kali Linux. That's going to be our box that we're going to actually use to launch our attacks. So we definitely need to get familiar with the command line, and also on the Windows side, get familiar with that as well. And then also, I think next week, out inclusive of the Empire, we're going to write our first Python program as well. It won't be anything fancy, just hello world. But I also want to direct you to Cyber Aces. So this is something that SANS put together, and SANS is extremely expensive, but they have a program where you can go to courses, and all these are free. And click on tutorials. And you have introduction to networking, system admin from a Windows perspective, dealing with PowerShell, dealing with Python, and also dealing with Windows. Right. So something to aid you in your learning, particularly with the Windows and command line basics, because as you saw when we popped the box earlier, it's going to be command line. Okay. So any more questions